last question I'd like to go into has to do with the fact that the true realizer inherently threatens the status quo. In other words, they are an ultimate or absolute attractor for the deepest peace and the highest bliss, and at the same time, their mere presence in the world creates conflict, and it's that fascinating paradox that I'd love for you, gentlemen, to speak a little bit about.
We're a shit magnet. We're a shit magnet.
I like Gurdjieff's concept of the sly man, because he had the idea that a person could be in that space and doing his spiritual work and so on, and be invisible, like a knife through water.
Yeah.
Now, some realizers choose to make a problem in society and go against the authorities and get crucified and so on.
Right.
While others, remain invisible in a way. So I think it's good policy to be as invisible as possible, because and whatever you do, you're going to threaten somebody.
Yeah, but if you believe that, we wouldn't be doing this Three Gurus
Oh,
program.
I forgot about that.
Because here we are sitting up on the stage in the middle of the most worldly city on the face of the planet.
How did that happen?
The Shakti did it.
Yeah, it must be.
But power has great responsibility, yet power is also iconoclastic. I mean, of course it's controversial. You embody a frequency of vibration, a power and an amplitude that squeezes everything around you energetically, that catalyzes everything around you energetically. And in human experience, that squeezing releases in everyone you encounter a clearing process. It is a process, a transformative process is happening, whether you believe in it or not, whether you engage in it or not. I sit you in the room with him, and you may have never met him, and 1 hour or 6 hours later, you will come out of there smoking. And you will have issues, and your stuff will be coming up. So the very process itself, being transformational, is catalytic and brings tremendous upheaval wherever it goes. And there's the controversy in it. It goes with the territory. So to me, is not that validation of who we are? Isn't it not validation of the role? I say, your clearing, your upheaval, O disciple, is validation of my mastery.
That's true.
Part of it is that just to sort of lay a context for everything that you've said, which I completely agree with, is that the whole universe, the whole manifest universe, and each of us individually can be thought of as dynamic systems. And a dynamic system, having established itself, has the tendency to want to perpetuate itself. And all of the energy that a dynamic system is able to capture, is sustained in a pattern. And almost nothing will change that pattern. Every time any impact, any other outside force operates on that dynamic system, or most internal aspects of that dynamic system will change, and it'll always go back to its original shape. But there are very few high leverage points, very few points in that dynamic system which, if tripped, bring, complete transformation. And so, one of the things a guru is a human being established in stillness, established in a state which is beyond the operation, the function of any dynamic system. And an encounter with that kind of stillness, that is a leverage point, a fulcrum point, which brings about a shift in anything that it encounters. And so, any person, any dynamic system, multidimensional, complex, fragmented event that encounters this stillness is going to start to be reorganized within itself. And that change, I mean, because dynamic systems resist change, they want to stay the same.
Right.
You know, the upheaval that happens from that encounter is you know, brings up every resistance that's there. And what happens for us is that, you know, people meet us, we drive them crazy. we're going to, when you meet that stillness, every one of your fears get activated, don't they? I mean, every one of the disciples' fears become activated. The weird thing about fear is, of course, 99.9% of it is totally imaginary.
Mm-hmm. It's like projection, imagination.
Just imaginary.
Something. which
I
means
see it. I really see it as moment to moment. You know, in inquiry, what I
Yes.
learned in inquiry
yes,
is to not get trapped in a big conceptual framework for your life, but
Yes.
to look at
Sure.
this moment.
sure.
And if you look at the big picture, you really freak out. But if you look only at this moment, you can handle it.
Sure,
and
that's
you have
true.
the
That's
faith
true.
to handle the next moment.
Then you can get through it.
Yeah, so one of the things that a guru has to do is not be as psychic as he is. He has to diminish his psychic power, see less. He inherently sees too much, so he looks and he sees less and looks just for the divinity, really. And
But
live simply and...
But what about the fact that the guru position, there's this, as I was saying before, that there's this fascinating conflict that the guru principle is like is an ultimate attractor for profound peace, right?
I can relate to that this way.
Intense
Yeah.
joy
Yeah.
and happiness.
Yeah.
And at the same time, inherently creates conflict in the way things have been in the status quo. Because the guru principle is, we could say from the perspective of consciousness, is an evolutionary principle or an evolutionary catalyst, right? Mm-hmm. So whenever we go from a lower level of development to a higher level of development, there's going to be some conflict between what has been and what could be. And for example, Swamiji was speaking about that when he said, for example, that the guru would see in the disciple this unimaginable potential that for the guru is also a choiceless attractor. And of course, the guru can only see that. And for example, in my own life, in my own work as a teacher, as a guru, I can't but help but see the potential, and maybe the unmanifest potential, but the living potential that I see immediately and directly in the individual, that often the individual will refuse to acknowledge, but I can't see anything else but that.
And you've had cases where you look at them and say, why don't you be who you really are? Why do you choose to be
all
this
the time.
ridiculous contracted version of it?
Exactly right, yes.
And then they phase into that beautiful thing, and then they forget that they ever had a problem. And then the next day they go back into the problem, and you say, why do you choose that? And it's clear to you that they're making a choice,
Right.
but it's completely not clear to them.
Right.
And then you do it the next day.
Exactly.
It's a process.
And so finally, in relationship to what we're speaking about, is the guru principle being an evolutionary principle in relationship to culture itself. Now, for example, in the East, not all, but many gurus can function within the established culture and society without threatening it. But that has to be modified because some gurus who are really profoundly realized can't help but shake things up. Anyway, even if that principle is culturally accepted and understood. Now, in a Western context, in a postmodern Western context, the awakened guru principle in an individual, it would seem to me, inherently is going to create conflict, because of the fact that such an individual is a profound evolutionary catalyst and really stands for the future.
Well, but you have so many vested interests. Established churches,
Yeah.
the whole therapeutic community, you know, pharmaceutical companies. I mean, there's so many vested interests, economic and politically powerful interests that are definitely, you know, not willing to let go of any of their influence over the culture, and they don't want to see anything change.
The majority in consciousness is fragmented,
Exactly
especially
right.
in the West.
Exactly
So,
right.
There's going to be conflict between wholeness and fragmentation always.
So
In
But
this
that's
culture, the dominance is fragmented.
But that's what you just said is very interesting, because you said there's always going to be a conflict between wholeness and fragmentation, always. So when that statement, implies or describes this kind of the ongoing evolutionary developmental context that there's always going to be, in a developmental context, a conflict between wholeness, which is our ultimate state at all times, and also what we're reaching for, right? And and this state of division or fracturedness.
Yes.
And also in an evolutionary developmental context, there's always going to be greater, deeper, and higher wholeness. So there's always going to be this tension between these two poles.
Yes.
And so this state of conflict is going to be a constant within a realized context of absolute peace.
But then
Stillness, that's
historically, we
fascinating,
can
yeah.
move towards a greater expression of grace. Like at our particular moment in history,
Yes.
there's whatever percentage, you can put it in spiral dynamics terms. Or there's a certain percentage, and maybe in 300 years, or 500 years, or 5,000 years, it's a different thing where grace starts to manifest. In Shaivite terms, they say grace goes into revelation, and then and separation diminishes.
Yeah, sure, but that's true. But in a developmental or evolutionary context, the kind of development that the manifestation or presence of grace is going to make possible is going to change and increase. So in other words,
Right.
if we were here maybe 3,000 years from now, 5,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, I'm sure our understanding and appreciation of what enlightenment was all about would, I'm sure, move forward and evolve and
one
develop.
would hope. But the fact is that we've been around for 10,000 years already, and it really hasn't changed that much, has it?
Well, I think it's beginning to, Swamiji, in relationship to the question of evolution, because in the at least as far as I understand it, in the pre-modern notion of enlightenment, the idea was to reach a final state where everything, and that would be the end of development, because traditionally the idea was if one became fully enlightened, the idea was one would never have to come back to Earth. But now that as we're beginning to see that our presence here has taken about 14 billion years of development, we realize that we're just beginning to get the plot, and so it makes sense that being here is really the whole point, not having to come back.
But being here without clinging.
Oh, always.
So,
that would.
and
that's
then,
the position
but
of
once you
freedom.
make that shift, then the rest of it doesn't matter. When you stop clinging, when there's no ego clinging
Yes.
any longer, then whether the dynamic is huge or the dynamic is small or whatever the dynamic is, who cares?
But when that non-clinging happens, that's a matter of evolution and consciousness.
Yeah, exactly right. And you've just it's ego clinging that is in fact the source of all fragmentation.
Well, the way I've understood it, at least up until most recently, is that once an individual has reached that point in their own development where they're able to let go in the way that you just described, are really not clinging, they become an agent, a conscious agent of the evolutionary process. But I believe now, rather than the consequence of that not clinging to be not to have to return to the manifest realm, I feel that it appears to me, or it
don't
seems,
say it, don't say it, don't say it.
that
You're coming back.
eternally they may have to.
I want to go, I don't want to stay.
And the manifest process isn't only this planet.
No.
50
Yeah.
billion,
Of course.
anywhere. Sure.
Oh man, don't I get a vacation?
Not until the game is over.
You big playboy, you.
Thank you very much.
You agree.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.